Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Madhava Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajanara Yashodanandana Brajajanara Jaya Gopi Jana Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Bolo. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Jaya Radha, Madhava Radha, Madhava Radhe. Jaya Radha, Madhava Radha, Madhava Radhe. Jaya Radha Kunda Bihari Radha Kunda Bihari Radhe Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Gaura Pimanande Jaya Vishupad Paramahamsa Pri Radhikasada Stotra Satta Sri Simad His Divine Grace Shri Bhave Charanarvind Bhakti Vedanta Swami Sri Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki ISKCON DBT Founder Acharyas Divine Grace Shri Prabhupada Ki Namacharya Sri Haridas Thakur Ki Samavata Bhakta Vrinda Ki Harinam Sankirtan Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Gaura Pimanande, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru, to Sri Gauranga, all glories to Sri Prabhupada. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Sarakaya Taksuranmiritam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Parakamalam Sri Gurun Vaisnavam Shyam Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Visakanditam Scha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kansana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansakalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Vyaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Narayanam Namaskritya Brahmachaiva Narotamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, let us first offer our respectful obeisances unto Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Nara, Narayana Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayasa Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. By regularly hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed practically to nil, and loving devotional service unto the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahma Samhitam Uttama Shloka Charitam Sakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishreyasaya Lokasya Dhanyam Swasyayanam Mahad. The Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Grantaraj, the king of all the literatures, is the literary incarnation of God. It is compiled by the incarnation of God, Srila Vyasadeva. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people. It is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gauda Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It's a good thing you've come. No, you've come. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Surabhyay Namaha. Om Surabhyay Namaha. Om Surabhyay Namaha. Mukham karoti vasalam pangum langayate girim yat kripat maham bandhe Shri Gurum Dinataranam yat kripat maham bandhe Shri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna. Jai. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our Bhagavatam class, and we are continuing seventh canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter number 2, entitled Hiranyakashipu, King of the Demons. And today we are reading text 18 and 19. Whoops. Actually, a few verses here don't have any purport, so we will read the next verse that does have a purport, and that is text 21. Everyone may kindly repeat. Bhutanam iha samvasaha prapayam Eva suvrate daivenai katra nitanam unitanam swa karmabhi bhutanam iha samvasa prapayam iva suvrate daivenai katra nitanam unitanam swakarmabhi bhutanam iha samvasa prapayam iva suvrate daivenai katra nitanam unitanam swakarmabhi bhutanam iha samvasa prapayam iva suvrate Daivenai katra nitanam unitanam swakarmabhihi. Okay, word for word, Bhutanam, of all living entities, Iha, in this material world, Samvasaha, the living together. Um, Prapayam, in a place for drinking cold water. Eva, like Suvrate, O my gentle mother, Daivena, by the superior arrangement, Ekatra, in one place, Nitanam, of those brought, Unitanam, of those led apart, Swakarma bihi, by their own reactions. So before reading the translation to today's text, text 21, we will read a few verses prior to this one that don't have any purport. Oh, I see it. We read them already. Yeah, 21. We just did 21. But one we didn't read is 20. Yeah, this is like beginning another thread, as they say. So text 20. Sri Hiranyakashipur Uvacha Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. Yeah, we normally hear that, not Sri Hiranyakashipu Uvacha. Okay. Ambamba he Vadhu Putra Viram Marhata Shauchitum Ripor Abhimukhe Slaghyaha Shuranam Vadha Ipsitaha. So this is Hiranyakashipu speaking. Translation. Hiranyakashipu said, my dear mother, sister-in-law and nephews, you should not lament for the death of the great hero, for a hero's death in front of his enemy is glorious and desirable. The enemy is Krishna, the greatest enemy. So, text 21, translation and purport. My dear mother, in a restaurant or place for drinking cold water or cold drinks, now you have cold drinks. Many travelers are brought together. Yeah, it's true, huh? When we go to a restaurant, we're not supposed to go to a restaurant. Many travelers are brought together, and after drinking water, they continue to their respective destinations. Very interesting. Similarly, living entities join together in a family, and later, as a result of their own actions, they are led apart to their destinations. Especially important for family members, householders. Well, we're all part of a family because we're born in some family. So, purport. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasaha ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. Translation of the verse from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3:27, quote, "The bewildered soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself the doer of activities which are actually carried out by nature." End of quote. All living entities act exactly according to the directions of Prakriti, material nature, because in the material world we are fully under a higher control. All the living entities in this material world have come here only because they wanted to be equal to Krishna in enjoyment, and have thus been sent here to be conditioned by material nature in different degrees. In the material world, a so-called family, a so-called family, a so-called husband, a so-called wife, a so-called daughter, a so-called son, a so-called sister. In the material world, a so-called family is a combination of several persons in one home to fulfill the terms of their imprisonment. Wow. Never thought about it like that. That's why if we don't read the Bhagavatam, we don't quite get it. Sweet home. Sweet, sweet home. So get ready for the rest of the prayer. As criminal prisoners scatter as soon as their terms are over and they are released. All of us who have temporarily assembled as family members will continue to our respective destinations. It's like we are prisoners coming together. And because we don't see the jail gate is there. Just like a jail, right? Same. In the jail, they're a bit bigger, though. Another example given is that family members are like straws carried together by the waves of a river. I think the criminal example is more vivid. Sometimes such straws mix together in whirlpools and later dispersed again by the same waves. They float alone in the water. Yeah. Although Hiranyakashipu was a demon, now this is very interesting. Although Hiranyakashipu was a demon, he had Vedic knowledge and understanding. Demons perform yajnas. Swaha. Thus, the advice given to his family members, his sister-in-law, mother, and nephew, was quite sound. We can learn from demons. Sometimes. Or we can learn all the time, actually. Even all of their bad activities, we know that we should not imitate such activities. The demons are considered highly elevated in knowledge, but because they do not use their good intelligence for the service of the Lord, they are called demons. Maya, yeah. Their knowledge is stolen by illusion, by Maya. The demons, however, act very intelligently to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I'm sorry, that didn't sound right. The demigods. The demigods, however, act very intelligently to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, verse 13, as follows. Atha pumbhir dvija srestha varnasrama vibhagashaha. I mean, Prabhupada is putting this verse. We didn't put it in there before the class. You know, it's in the purport. Sometimes people don't believe us. Yeah. Atha pumbhir dvija srestha varnasrama vibhagasaha sanustistasya dharmasya samsiddhir haritoshanam samsiddhir haritoshanam. Translation to this text from the Srimad Bhagavatam, quote, O best among the twice born, it is therefore concluded that the highest perfection one can achieve by discharging his prescribed duties, dharma, according to caste, divisions, and orders of life, is to please the Lord Hari. End of quote. To become, last sentence of the purport, to become a demigod or to become godly, whatever one's occupation. Very interesting how to get brought together, and after drinking water, they continue to their respective destinations. Similarly, living entities join together in a family, and later, as a result of their own actions, they are led apart to their destinations. Very nice text and purport explanation given by Srila Prabhupada. The vast majority of people in the material world are not even knowing that they are in a prison house, the prison house of the material world. And therefore, they are forced by the laws of nature. The laws of nature means by the modes of material nature, they are forced to engage in all kinds of activities which are actually causing their own suffering. In other words, we are the cause of our own happiness, so-called material happiness and so-called material distress. Ultimately, as Prabhupada and our acharyas explain, the material world is but unhappiness. Why is the material world unhappiness? Because we are disconnected with what is actually a real happiness. We don't really know what is the definition of happiness. Happiness is described, of course, in the Bhagavatam, in our Vedic literatures, as what is fully satisfying, completely uninterrupted, and fully, unmotivated, unalloyed. Unalloyed means pure. Pure means without any tinge of material motivation. And therefore, when we are under the influence of the modes of material nature, the common denominator is kama, desire, material desire. It is these material desires that are binding us, continue to bind us again and again, continuously, from one body to another, from one lifetime to another. And this has been going on since time immemorial. So it is it is only by cultivating this kind of knowledge, it is only a personality like Srila Prabhupada, who is self-realized soul, who can give such kind of explanations as we have heard in the purport. You know, that family members come together as prisoners come together. And because prisoners are bound by the laws of the state to be in that prison house, they are living out their particular term. Some prisoners get out of the prison earlier than others. Some stay longer. Someone sent a question, I think, the other day. Is it ordained that some living entities permanently remain in the material world? What would you answer to that? Is it possible that someone eternally will stay in the material world? Huh? He's saying yes, and you're saying no. You're reading the same books now. Actually, theoretically, it is possible in that one who chooses not to take this knowledge or cultivate this knowledge, one can repeatedly make the same mistake. And that's what we've been doing, actually, for many, many lifetimes. So theoretically, one could, but one is not actually destined. Just like in other belief, in other faiths, just like in Christianity, that is very clearly established, that either you surrender or you go to hell, you're damned eternally, you know, and good luck. You can't get out of it. So that is the wrong understanding, of course, because by nature, the spirit soul can at any moment, if that living entity is fortunate to come in contact with devotees, has the possibility, the ability to actually take to this knowledge, take to the process by which one can resolve. Yeah. But it's amazing that because, as Prabhupada quotes also in the purport, Maya is so strong that when when living entities come together in a family-like situation, they identify. They identify with the family members. They identify with the country in which they are born, and they become attached, you see. So only someone who actually has this knowledge of Krishna consciousness, Vedic knowledge, can transcend this situation, and therefore that's an important principle, fundamental, we could say, a fundamental principle which is taught, which is introduced in the very beginning of one's life. From the very beginning, even like in Vedic marriage, like compared to other marriages, you know, in other marriages they have prayers. Now you are united, and may you live eternally for, you know. Yeah, right. You know, may yeah. In Vedic culture, we tell you, listen, at 50 you have to separate. In this life, right? In this life, you're getting married today. We bless you, of course, and may all good things happen to you, and may you have many children. But at the age of 50, you have to give it up. It means at the age of 50, Vanaprastha is there. In other words, it is built in Vedic culture that we are only temporarily in our material situation. In married life, one knows, and of course, some people don't like to hear that. even though, it's like, because the modern, we can say, conception of love, of falling in love, falling in love and falling out of love, constantly going. Mostly it's falling out of love. There's more falling out of love, and therefore there are more divorces and separations, especially in the Western world. In the Vedic culture, the concept of love is different. The love is only properly understood within a spiritual context. Everything else outside of the spiritual context that ultimately are meant to please me, satisfy me. If you don't quite satisfy me the way to my expectations, then I don't love you anymore. Whereas in the spiritual realm, in the spiritual context, love is of a very different nature. So therefore, for us as devotees, especially those who are, let's say, in a grihastha ashram, householder life, if one has received, and that's why it's important to receive that training before entering householder life, then both the husband and the wife know that ultimately it is Krishna who's protecting me. My husband is there, okay, he can do something, but he's not, he can't really protect me the way Krishna can protect me. There's a temporary arrangement for protection, of course, but therefore in the culture, primarily, husband and wife, they surrender to Krishna. Then they can be happy. In a non-Krishna conscious context, marriage, people surrender to one another, kind of, and therefore there's it is flawed from the very beginning, because the concept or the understanding is incorrect. So these are two very very good examples whereby we can, very easily understand. In this way, Krishna consciousness is very practical. We were talking about criminality just a few days ago. We need to understand those who are especially more advanced in spiritual and transcendental knowledge. They understand this aspect of criminality. Yeah, that we are all, because we are here in the material world, we are by nature criminals. Why we are criminals? Because we have broken the law. The law, the universal law, natural law, is that we are meant to be engaged in a loving relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We are meant to be engaged in His service because that's our nature, and we have been created for that purpose. We are meant to be in the spiritual world. We have broken the law by rejecting that relationship, and we find ourselves here in the material world. So therefore, we also read wonderful descriptions. I mean, they are very, I would say, sobering to hear the kind of descriptions that our great acharyas, describing themselves as being most fallen, and they actually really mean also that they are most fallen, because they have that understanding of how great is the Lord, how perfect and ideal, and how insignificant and how fallen, isn't it? How fallen we are as living entities for having rejected this relationship with the Lord. And of course, we get a little bit of understanding in the material world in terms of relationships between individuals. And we see that somehow or other, when we happen to break a relationship with a friend or whoever, or a family member at times as well, because it happens a lot also, especially in Kali Yuga. Prabhupada one time gave the example, in India, because of the Vedic culture, breaking a relationship is like breaking a vase. And if you and there's no way it can come back. Even you paste it together, it can never be the same vase. It can never be the same. So in a similar way, when we, therefore the importance of being very cautious in our dealings with one another, especially I would say on the spiritual or transcendental platform. And it is for that reason as well that in the list of the 10 offenses, offending Vaishnavas is our greatest impediment for actually advancing in spiritual life. So, in the Dasamula Tattva of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, is very interesting actually, how of the 10 tattvas mean what, let's say 10 principles or 10 very, 10 eternal truths, 10 foundational, we could say, understandings. Out of the 10, 7 are related to relationship. Our Krishna conscious philosophy is based on these 3 very basic but most essential concepts called Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana, isn't it? The whole Vedic culture, the whole philosophy of Krishna consciousness is focused and centered on these 3 concepts. The more we understand them, then we can lead our lives properly, and we can progress in Krishna consciousness. So of those 10 principles, which are also referred to, the same concepts of Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana, are also the main theme of Srila Jiva Goswami in his Sat Sandarbhas. Very interesting. And he also gives more of the 6 Sandarbhas, 6 books that he wrote explaining this whole philosophy. The major portion is also on Sambandha. So in the Dasamulu Tattva, the first, the very first principle, of course, the same as Srila Jiva Goswami, is establishing that all understanding or all knowledge is based on Vedic knowledge, the Vedas. Vedic knowledge is the beginning and the end, so to speak. It is the source of all knowledge. And then from there, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he explains 7 principles connected with Sambandha. The first 3 are connected with Krishna. The first one is called Param Tattva. Krishna, he is Param Tattva. The second principle, he tells that Krishna, he is Shaktiman. He is the source of all Shakti energies. And number 3, he is Rasa Samudra. Rasa Samudra. He is the source of all feelings, of all emotions, of all sentiments, rasa. Very, these three are sciences within themselves, actually. So these are the three tattvas regarding Krishna. And then living entity somehow or other has four, one more than Krishna. But we'll understand we're in a very different position. So the jiva has four, is understood in terms of four tattvas or four principles. The first one is amsha. That verse is there in the Bhagavad Gita. Mamai vangsho jiva loke, jiva bhuta sanatana. We are the sanatan amsha, the eternal part and parcel. So living entity is amsha. And then second is living entity can be those who come in the material world, they're called baddha jiv, baddha, conditioned. Those who don't come in the material world, who eternally remain in the spiritual world, they are mukta jiv. That's the other category. And then the fourth aspect of the living entity is the jiva. The jiva is Veda Abeda. Veda means same, Abeda different. Veda in quality the same as Krishna. Krishna is Satchit Ananda Vigraha. Jiva is also Satchit Ananda Vigraha, but in a minute quantity. Yeah. So the quality of the jiva with the Supreme Lord, or the quality of the Atma with the Paramatma is the same, spiritual, and having these features, but the quantity is different. So it is only when we read Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the teachings that we find in the Bhagavad Gita, and that's why we can more easily, or we could say we can only properly understand the Bhagavatam after nicely, properly reading the Bhagavad Gita. They are intimately connected with one another. So we should not become morose now, thinking that, oh, Prabhupada is telling us we have to keep reminding ourselves we are criminals. My God, I'm a criminal. But we are. We are criminals, and but we can become good criminals by understanding that, okay, you know, somehow I'm here in prison, in the prison house of the material world, and I don't belong here, and I have to rectify myself to get out of these walls, you know, gates, whatever, prison bars. Every house has many prison bars, actually. Yeah. So this should remind us of the prison in which we are living in. And this you have to explain to your good wife and children. Husband actually is meant to be sometimes giving such bad news to his family members. Actually, it's good news in the sense that it is good news, in that it helps us to understand what is happening. Simply, as we mentioned yesterday, when a living entity is fortunate to take the Krishna consciousness, then his situation changes. He is no longer simply under the stringent laws of material nature. Krishna directly takes charge of that living entity. So that should be a comfort. Even though we're prisoners, we are under the, we're under, you know, we're under the protection of the top guy, the big boss, right? Who's in charge of the prison house. So, yeah. So any questions or comments on this? Yes.
Srila Prabhupada wrote in Hiranyakashipu was a demon and he had Vedic knowledge and understanding. So,
Yes, but not.
understanding the Vedic knowledge itself is understanding about the Supreme Lord who's revealed. Like why he has got that envious on Supreme Lord.
Yes. No, when it is mentioned that he had knowledge, had Vedic knowledge, and he had understanding, but he did not have full understanding. He did not have full understanding. He understood, he knew so many things, and that's why in this chapter he will give Bhagavatam classes. Yeah, right, to his family members. So, but the only thing is that he was missing something about surrendering. Surrendering to, because we read a few sentences or a few texts before that, yeah, he came to the conclusion, you know, uh, Bhagavad Gita explains how Krishna is impartial. He is a well-wisher of everyone. But when Hiranyakashipu's brother, Hiranyaksha, was killed by this Vishnu, then he concluded, falsely concluding, that actually the Lord is not partial, or impartial rather. He is partial. He killed my brother, you know. So he's not favoring the demigods in the same way that he's favoring the demons. So therefore, he's my enemy. So it means he had a lot of understanding, but we could say the main understanding that one needs to surrender to Vishnu and give up one's demoniac mentality, that was missing. Yeah. Otherwise, otherwise he would not have become Hiranyakashipu, but he was destined to become. That was connected with, as we know, whole other Leela, Jai and Vijay, right? So yeah, it goes back to Jai and Vijay. Sometimes, unless we unless we are introduced to the whole picture, it's like when the children of Devaki were killed, when the children of Ganga were also, if we don't know the full picture, then we will misunderstand that how can a mother, kill her child right after birth like that. So there was a larger picture involved there. So he had a lot of knowledge. Demons, they perform jagyas also, because actually for us it's a little more difficult to understand because Vedic culture is we're so far from it, and it's like so absent in our lives. Even unfortunately here in India as well, it has reduced a lot, and what to speak of in the Western countries. So people just cannot so easily relate to some of these descriptions and aspects that are presented or described at times. Yeah. Anything? Yes.
Yeah, the last paragraph and last verse, Prabhupada says was Samsiddhi Haritochana.
Yeah, Samsiddhi Haritochana.
Yeah, here only discussing about the imprisonment or prison house.
Right.
So once we know that ultimately we are the jiva, part and parcel, and then we are here in this material world. So even in the prison state also, we have to become a good citizen within the prison also.
We have to become a good prisoner.
Good prisoner by following the rules of the prison.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not that I discard the prison rules and say no, I have liberated and I'm not in the liberated state.
Correct.
And Krishna is there to, liberate me. But
Right.
then we have to demonstrate also that I have become a good prisoner, how to become a good prisoner,
Yes.
being in the prison.
Yes.
So I think Maharaj, I think this is important always that we discard the laws of nature,
Yeah.
laws of land, and laws of all those
Yeah.
things.
So what?
When
Yeah.
you say Ekavarna,
Yeah. So what you're saying actually in a camouflaged manner is that we have to follow Varna and Ashrama. Because that is those are the rules in the prison house. That's the system in the prison house of the material world. That to actually more easily and more quickly get out of this prison house, you have to follow, as you mentioned, the rules that are in the prison house, the rules of the house. And the rules means dharma. So within the material world, the prison house of the material world, the system, ideal system, which is given by the first superintendent, not actually the one who is means by Krishna, is following the system of Varna and Ashrama. Yeah. And so that's a very important point, of course. Although at times one may not fully or completely, but we should not take advantage of this kind of statement by saying that now we just discard the whole thing, Yes. Yeah, right, or reject it. That is a misunderstanding. And Prabhupada, on many occasions, I mean, through his statements and explanations, he made that point very clear, that we more easily become Vaishnavas by following Varnashrama. We become Vaishnavas by following Varnashrama. Same statement actually as made by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I've been quoting it at different times in his what is it, Sajjana Toshani. In the Sajjana Toshani of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he explains that the system of Varna and Ashrama is the given system by the Lord for Vaishnavas in their conditioned state. What do you mean, conditioned state? Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty powerful quote or powerful statement by a powerful acharya that we can't just say, well, it doesn't apply to me. Varnashrama is that ideal system given by the Lord, created by Krishna, for the Vaishnavas in their conditioned state. Yeah, I think that's pretty clear. Any other? So we should take this opportunity to welcome Kinkini Prabhu and Udupi Krishna, who has come also. Anything?
Because today is Srila Prabhupada's arrival in US.
Yes.
I would request 2 minutes if you can share something of Srila Prabhupada.
Share something about Srila Prabhupada's arrival in the US. Yeah, Prabhupada said, when I stepped off the Jaladuta, I didn't know if I should go right or left. And because Prabhupada, when he boarded the Jaladuta, some more than 1 month, it took, I think, 35, 40 days, something like that, more than 1 month. So he didn't know that actually somebody was going to meet him. Prior to that, he had, because that's part of the formalities, even now. You need a sponsor to go in a foreign country. In addition to your visa, in addition, at that time there was a T form, something, whatever, and of course a passport. So at some point there was some Agarwal family, and whose son was in America. And as a formality, he had given sponsorship to many people before. Said, oh yeah, yeah, he gave it to this one also. And of course, he knew that Prabhupada was arriving on such and such a date, and he had sent somebody to the port to receive Prabhupada. Otherwise, Prabhupada was like, um, yeah, um, and potent, powerful poem written by Srila Prabhupada in Bengali, especially for Bengalis. It's like the original text that later on was translated, and devotees have since composed some very nice song. This Markine Bhagavad Dharma. Markine Bhagavad Dharma. Markine means America. Introducing the whole poem was introducing or bringing Krishna consciousness to America, bringing dharma to the land of adharma. Bringing dharma to the land of dharma with the weapon of Bhagavatam. That's the only weapon that can actually destroy adharma. So Prabhupada was fully enlivened and fully well armed. I think he had maybe 200 sets of Bhagavatam. 200. Something like that I heard, yeah. I mean, for so many years before leaving, he was preparing himself for that battle of confronting Kali in downtown New York. So his weapon was the Bhagavatam. That's why as soon as the first canto was printed, and he worked, as we know, I mean, he labored day and night, practically speaking, traveling to Delhi, back and forth, back and forth. No one to support him practically. Selling his Back to Godhead magazine, which was 1 or 2 pages at that time, not like we see it today. But he had that full faith and determination, and it was like he understood. Srila Prabhupada understood that this is it's like very historical. So therefore, before leaving, we can still see it. I think it's in the Vilamrita. You can see it. Prabhupada's photo with his passport, and I think he had written something to be printed. In one newspaper, there was a small clip or something. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami going to America. Prabhupada understood, but the whole world was asleep in Maya, and so like this, he on the Jaladuta, as we know, he celebrated Janmashtami and his birthday, his 70th, he turned 70 on the Jaladuta. And he also gave a lecture on Janmashtami, and he sold his first Bhagavatam to the captain of the ship. Yeah, and I think he got a small donation from him also. Otherwise, he had like 40 rupees in his pocket. Prabhupada would say later on that 40 rupees, you can spend that in New York. First of all, you could not even get dollars for that. Could not get. So I think he came back with the 40 rupees. When he came back after a couple of years, then I think he used that same 40 rupees to pay a taxi or something. When he, I think in Delhi or whatever. Yeah. So today being Prabhupada's arrival in 1965, very important and significant for all of us because that's how and when and where it all started. Yeah. And we are receiving the good benefits and results of Prabhupada's great sacrifice of going yeah, to the West. Okay. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Gauda Pimanande, Hare Krishna. Yeah. Oh, 2 roses. Wow. Not from the garden, eh?